All right, let's do this. New episode of Fans on the Run. First one in a while. All right, let's get this show on the road. Nope, wrong theme song. There's a new one. Nope, forgot about that. Forgot. And there we go. Got it.
This is Fans on the Run, a podcast made by, for, and about Beatles fans. And now, here's your host, Alexanian.
All right, hello. Welcome back to Fans on the Run. Man, it's been a while. Missed me? Yeah, this is the first episode back after my extended hiatus, where I basically just did nothing. It's John Lennon had his bed in for peace, I had my bed in for nothing, and it lasted about a month. But, enough of my delusional ramblings, even though I'm sure you miss them. If enough people want me to do delusional ramblings, I'll do an episode of just that. But that's besides the point. We have a fantastic guest for you today. Would you say so? I'd say so. She was an Apple Scruff before they were called Apple Scruffs. She appeared on a Beatle record, and she's the author of a book called From Rio to Abbey Road. Well, technically the title's in Portuguese, and I didn't want to offend anyone with my terrible Portuguese. But either way, an English translation's coming in the near future, so I can just call it From Rio to Abbey Road. But that's besides the point. Lizzie Bravo, welcome to Fans on the Run.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. Beautiful sunny day. The next thing after my building is the Christ statue, so I see it all the time.
Oh, that's got to be a great view.
It is fantastic. It is beautiful, yeah.
And for once, I can actually match you and say it's a bright, sunny day here, too.
Oh, good.
Good. First sunny day after a week of bitter cold.
Oh, no, we don't have cold here.
Yeah. Well, I'm Canadian, so what do you expect?
Yeah. I've been to Canada several times, so but never in the winter, thank God.
So, one of the first things I want to ask you, and I kind of mentioned it before we started, is I'm only really familiar with like the Beatle fan community in, for lack of a better term, the English speaking world, like America, Europe, that kind of thing. What's the situation like down there in South America, Beatle wise?
Well, I can only speak for Brazil, which is where I live. But I've been, I've talked about that. But in Brazil, the Beatles were always big from when they started, when we first heard about them. And there's been, it just grows and grows and grows. There's many fans everywhere. Paul has been here many times, and his concerts always sell out within couple of days, and they're always like huge venues, 50,000 people and like that, and people stay out all night so they can get a better view, because the front tickets, though they're the most expensive, they're standing room only. So you need to sleep overnight online on the queue so you can get a good spot.
I imagine for some people it's like waiting several days.
I know, yeah. I know some girls who camp out in tents, and they stay there for days. But not me, thank you very much.
I think that just says something about the Beatle popularity, that we're not even talking about the Beatles back in 1964. We're talking about like present day Paul McCartney. He can have people camping out overnight.
Yeah, and people go like people buy tickets to, like, if he does 5 different cities, people will follow him, buy tickets, and several of my friends buy those fifteen $1,500 tickets, VIP tickets, and they have all these privileges and all that. And anyway, people are crazy. They buy everything. They buy all the books and all the records and everything, and they're just huge. It seems to grow year after year. There's a lot of Facebook groups, tons of them. Anyway, just a lot of people.
Well,
and the younger generations just get it from their parents or relatives, and
so the young
just
people
grows,
are crazy about Beatles too.
Sure.
That's just amazing. Well, you mentioned books, and I know you have one. Unfortunately, some of us can't read it because it's in another language.
Portuguese.
It's in Portuguese.
Yes, it's in Portuguese. I released the book 5 years ago. It's a totally independent production. It's a 300-page hardcover book in coated paper. Has just over 200 unpublished photos taken by me and some of my friends. And it just tells my story through my teenage diaries. I've seen them almost every day. And there's all my autographs and all kinds of different. So I released the book in December of 2015, and I sell it myself. It doesn't sell in bookstores. And then it sold out in 2017, and I should have released a second, printing right there and then. But, my brother and I were caring for our mother. She was getting sicker. She had, she got Alzheimer's. And so I was, my head was somewhere else at that point. But now in the beginning of last year, I had another 1,000 books printed, but I had them printed in Paraguay. As I was telling you before, I've been to Paraguay twice. I have very good friends there, and I printed it at this very, very modern printing facility there, and the quality of the printing is just superb. But the books got ready in March, and the roads were closed, so I had 1,000 books in Paraguay, which I couldn't see.
Yeah.
The first one I saw, the first batch they sent me was in December.
It took that long?
Yeah, that's when they opened the roads, and I could get the first 100 books, and now last month they sent me 80 books, which are almost finished now, and I'm going to get, small installments of books along the way until I'm done with 1,000 books. And I have translated it to English. It has been corrected by a friend of mine in London who is not only a writer for the BBC, but he used to wait outside the studios with me. So he has the experience of being there. And also he has a chapter, he and another friend has a chapter in my book where they tell their story of seeing the boys and some great, great black and white photos, also totally unpublished, that they shared with me. And there's another chapter of another friend of mine who borrowed my camera to go inside. He was interviewing John in '67, and when I realized he didn't have a camera, I let him use mine. And so that's another chapter. That's this whole story and some great, great pictures of inside of Paul's house, and with John and Paul and Mick Jagger, who was there at the time.
Oh, Mick Jagger was there too.
Yeah, Mick used to come around to visit Paul. I saw him there several times. And I saw the Stones also at EMI. I got to see Brian Jones coming out of the studios with them late at night. But anyway, the book is, again, an independent production. It will be an independent production, the English version. We're going to start putting it, my designer is going to start putting together the book at the end of April, beginning of May. And then when it's done, because you have to realize that the Portuguese language has a lot more characters than English. So, and my book is like, you're reading a diary entry, and beside that diary entry, there's the autograph I got that day and the picture I took that day. So she has to be very careful to, it's not gonna be an easy job, to maintain the, the same way it's in Portuguese, where you're reading something and the image is right beside it.
But it'll be well worth it.
So, oh yeah, it's, well, I mean, I know it's my book, but I get so many compliments on it, that, I know it's beautiful and I know it's unique. There's no other book that I know of somebody talking about that period of time and what it was like to wait for them, and in different situations, outside the studios, outside Paul's house, outside the editing studios, and all kinds of situations that happened while you were waiting. So I don't think there's another book like mine. And you have to be a little crazy to share your teenage diaries with people, because obviously it was, well, you have to realize that being 15 in 1967 is sort of like being 8 nowadays.
Yeah.
Because we were very, very young at 15. A 15-year-old today is a woman. We were kids. But I didn't edit.
Speaking as a teenager myself, I'm not sure I'd want people to read my diaries.
Yeah, what most people tell me is that when they read my book, they feel like they were there with me. And that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted people to, first of all, it took me many years to put together a book, because I didn't know how to present the story. And it suddenly dawned on me that it would be much more interesting for the 15-year-old girl to tell the story than for the, I'm almost 70 now. I'll be 70 in a couple of months. It's much more interesting for the teenager to tell the story than for, the grandmother to tell the story. So it took a very long time to decide how to present the story and all of that. And, I sold a lot of books to non-English speaking people, over 200 books to non-speaking. Even now, I just sent one to Norway. I sent like 7 or 8 to Italy. I sent one to England yesterday, and I have another one going to the US. So, people, even though they can't read Portuguese, they still buy it.
With all I've heard about,
but hopefully by the end of the year.
With all I've heard about your book, I want to learn Portuguese now just to read it.
I know. One person wrote me and said, "Lizzie, I've already memorized all the photos. Now I need you to put out the English version so I can read, what happened." And so it is taking a long time. But you have to realize that when you're doing everything yourself, and it's different. When you have a big publishing company behind you, I imagine it's different. But when you're doing, I do everything from buying the bubble wrap to, printing the labels and wrapping each and every book and taking them to the post office. I go to the post office every Monday and take the pile of books and mail them. And, I like that. I like that. It gives me like a proximity to my reader.
It's a very personal thing.
Yeah. It's personal. I know if I sold in bookstores, it would probably sell faster and more. But at the same time, I don't know about the other countries, but over here, the big chains, they want to give you 50% of the cover price, and they pay you like 6 months, after. And it just didn't seem like a very good idea. And also, in that case, I sign every book to the person's name. And if they were in bookstores, people couldn't get them signed. I don't know. It just seems like a more personal situation. I don't know, but when the English book is out, it might be a little more difficult, because I will be selling to the whole world, not just to the Portuguese-speaking people. So it might get a little complicated, but I'll figure it out when it happens. If I need to hire somebody to help me. Or,
when the English book comes out, I'll be one of the first people to buy it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, very.
You talked a little bit about, the books about your Beatles story, I'd like to ask you a little bit about how your Beatles story started. How did you first discover the Beatles?
Well, I discovered the Beatles here in Brazil in early 1964 when they started to get more attention. The press started to talk about them more. And then I met several people that also liked them. And the first time I saw them moving, it was at a small documentary that was called The Beatles Come to Town. And they showed that before the feature film, which meant that me and my friends, we used to stay in this movie theater all day long. So we saw the documentary, and then we saw the movie, and then we saw the documentary again, and then we saw the movie. And they would show it on different movies. One of them was a movie with Elizabeth Taylor, which was actually a really good movie, but I saw it so many times. And then there was a Peter Sellers very funny movie that I also saw many times because I wanted to see them. Because you have to realize there was hardly anything here on TV about, with them. So that's the only way we could see them move. Otherwise, we could just have like a photo in a magazine or a newspaper. And then when A Hard Day's Night came out, we used to watch it. We used to come into the theater at 2:00 and leave at 10 at night. And somebody's parent would come and pick us up and drop everybody at their home. And we would stay there all day watching that movie. I saw that movie over 100 times. Yeah, both films. Both Hard Day's Night and Help. I have it written down somewhere, how many times, but I'm pretty sure I hit the 100 time mark, because that's the only way we could see them moving, is watching the movie.
When those films came out in Brazil, were they dubbed in Portuguese or was it English?
No. It was in English with subtitles.
So you got to hear the Beatles' actual voices too.
Of course, I would hate it if they had subtitles. God, that would have been awesome.
You get all excited, you go there to see and hear the Beatles, and then some Brazilian actor is dubbing Paul McCartney. No, that would not be okay with us. But yeah, we saw, and it was like a big event. Everybody meets at the theater, and we hide in the bathroom so we don't have to pay another ticket. Things like that, things you do when you're 14 years old and 13 and 14 years old. Smart.
Yeah.
What was the first Beatle album, or back then? Were you buying mainly like albums or singles or EPs or?
The first. My father used to travel a lot, and he for his business, and he brought me all the Beatles, everything. Actually, my dad passed away. It was a year ago this week on the 18th. But even when he was like in his 80s, he was still, every time he traveled, he would bring me something about the Beatles, a book or a T-shirt or whatever, He always bought me everything he saw about the Beatles. And he bought me I never know if it's With the Beatles. I don't remember if With the Beatles is the American one or Meet the Beatles. The one I got is the American album. Meet the Beatles. Okay, With the Beatles is the British one, right? Okay, so I got that album. But I have to say, I got a Chubby Checker album at the same time. And I paid more attention to the Chubby Checker album, who I already knew. And then I got, into the Beatle album, listening to the Beatle album, and I loved it and all that. And then when A Hard Day's Night came, then I was already totally hooked when A Hard Day's Night came. And, we formed a big group of people. Some of these people are my friends up to this day. I call us the dinosaurs, because we're all in our 70s and we're still fans, and we still trade pictures, and we still send each other. We have a small WhatsApp group, and we send each other links for videos and things. So we still at it in our 70s.
Once a Beatles fan, always a Beatles fan.
Oh yeah, sure. And so, and then when in late 1966, when they decided they were not going to tour anymore, my best friend Denise and we just freaked out. We said, you know, they're not going to come here. We're not going to see them ever. We have to do something. So she decided to, she got this idea, you know, we have to go to London. We had just turned 15, both of us. And in Brazil at that time, when you turned 15, you either had a party to present you to society, you know, like at a club or something like that, or you went to Europe. But you went to Europe with, you know, with a tour guide, or, you know, to like, you know, London, Paris, Rome, and, you know, but we wanted our tour without a guide and just London. And we convinced our parents. I still don't understand how we did that. But of course, our parents thought that we were just going to be there for the school holidays and come back home, which Denise did, but I didn't.
Stayed.
I stayed. Yeah, I arrived. Denise went like about a month, 3 weeks to a month before me, because Dad was away on one of his trips, and he had to sign for me to travel alone. So when I got there, she already knew everything. She knew where they lived. She knew where they recorded, at what time. She had made several friends. So I got there on February 14th, 1967. And we dropped my suitcases at the hostel and went straight to EMI, because she had seen them going in to record Sgt. Pepper. They were recording. And so I saw the 4 Beatles and Brian Epstein and Mal Evans the day I arrived. The very day.
What a way to welcome you to London.
It was just, I know, it was crazy. And the first Beatle I saw was my favorite, always John. And, you know, we were sitting there in the middle of the stairs. It was late. And we had our bags and things on the floor. And then suddenly somebody says, "Excuse me." And Denise turned around and she said to me, "It's him." And I thought to myself, him who? You know? And then I got up and I faced John. And, you know, Denise says that I spoke to him. He spoke to me. Maybe he shook my hand. I don't know. But I just, after looking into his eyes, my mind went blank. I don't remember anything. I didn't remember anything when I got to the hostel, let alone now, you know, 50-something years later. I just, you know, it was too much. Can you imagine? One day you're in your house with your parents, and the next day you're looking at your favorite Beatle. You know, I didn't have time. She wouldn't let me shower and change. I was wearing the same outfit that I had on the plane.
I can't imagine how to process
said, no.
that. It's going from
camping
out in a movie theater to see the same little documentary of the Beatles to being within inches of John Lennon.
It was crazy, believe me.
What a time to move
and
to
then
London.
And then I know our timing, without knowing, we didn't know they were recording. We didn't know anything. Our timing was perfect. And that day, John came out with Ringo. And then when they left, I started crying. And Denise said to me, you know, go away. Paul's going to come out. I don't want him to see you crying like that. And I said, okay. So I went to the other side, and Mal Evans came over, and he put his arm around me and said, "Why are you crying? What's wrong?" And I said, "Oh, you know, I'm 15. I'm from Brazil. I just arrived today, and I just saw John, and I like him so much." And he said, "Don't cry. John's going to be here tomorrow. You'll see him again." And he gave me a Kit Kat. So my excuse for being addicted to Kit Kats to this day is that, of course, I associate Kit Kats with a very happy memory. You know, that's my story. I'm sticking to it. You know?
The important question is, do you still have the Kit Kat wrapper?
Yes, of course. And it's in my book. Yes, I have it.
That's actually really nice to hear.
So, you know,
it reaffirms all the stories I've heard about Mal Evans just being a great guy.
Yeah, he was a good guy, really. So, you know, I started going. Then later on, George and Paul came out, and actually, there's a beautiful picture of Paul from that night. Denise took a picture of John as I was looking at him, I'm not in the picture, but that's exactly what I was seeing, you know, seeing him for the first time. And then on the next page in my book, there's a picture of Paul that she took. That's really, really nice too. And that's the first time I ever saw him. And then I started going there every day. And, you tell a 15-year-old Beatles fan that there's a place where she can see all 4 Beatles, and where else is she going to be? That's, so we used to go there every day. Then Denise came back to Brazil to go back to school. And then my father called me, and you have to realize that making a phone call those days was not like today. You had to call the operator and request a call, and it was a little more complicated. And my dad said, you have to book your ticket to come home because you need, school's going to start, and your mother needs to, buy your school books and, get you ready for school. And I said, well, I'm not coming back. And he said, oh, what do you mean you're not coming back? I said, I'm not coming back. And he said, well, I'm not going to send you any money. And I said, doesn't matter. I got a job. And I got a job through a friend at a, really shady hotel. And we lived in the hotel in the basement in this little room, the 2 of us. And every time the subway, the tube passed by, everything would shake, And my mother said, you've never made a bed in your life. And I said, I know. Now I'm going to make a lot of beds every day. So, because we had a very comfortable life. We were served by maids, and, I'd lived in Venezuela, Caracas, Venezuela, for 8 years, from age 3 onwards. And so that's why I speak fluent Spanish as well, because I learned to read and write in Spanish. So, then when my mother found out that I was going to work in a strange hotel, she was upset. And I said to them, don't even bother coming to look for me, because you're not going to find me. And that's, that was it. I didn't come home.
When you lived in London, were the Beatles the only pop stars you tried to find, or did you?
No, I only had eyes for them, but I did see. I went to a lot of concerts. I saw Jimi Hendrix twice, who I love to this day, and I was at that Jimi Hendrix concert that he opened playing Sgt. Pepper. I was
saw
at that
him
concert.
At the Saville?
Yeah. Sure, twice.
That is fantastic.
And
oh my God.
And that night, Paul and Jane, George, Patty, and Cynthia were there. Ringo and John were not there. And he opened. He came on the stage. He was, in the middle of the stage by himself, and he played and sang Sgt. Pepper. And then after that, the rest of the band came on. But he was a solo. He was just him. Unfortunately, there's no video of that moment. There's a video of him playing Sgt. Pepper, but in another day, another situation, not that one. Where's an iPhone when you need it, right?
That's got to be one of the most iconic moments in rock history, and you were there.
Yes, I was. I was there. I used to go. I went to a lot of concerts at that time. A lot of concerts. I have I have it in my diary, in my book. I saw many different bands, but I didn't follow any of them. I didn't know where they lived, or I didn't know where they recorded. I didn't know anything.
Had eyes for the Beatles.
Sure.
Were there any other concerts like that stick out to you?
I saw Joe Cocker at the Albert Hall. I saw Donovan. I saw T-Rex when they were called Tyrannosaurus Rex. Who else did I see? I saw Blind Faith, and I saw the Hollies not at a concert, at a TV concert. I went to the BBC with a friend. She knew them, and we saw them, at this TV show.
Pops or something?
No, I don't think I don't remember exactly. I know that after the filming, we sat with them at a pub I don't remember. You have to realize, I only saved in my memory and in my diary things about the Beatles. Like I'm sure that I saw James Taylor go in and out of Apple, but I don't remember. I'm sure that I must have seen many other pop stars that were recording at EMI at the time, but I don't remember, or I didn't notice. It was, you know, I won. When they have horses, um, and they have this thing
Yeah.
beside their eyes. I don't know what that's called. That was me. That was me regarding John Lennon. Um, yeah, so we were there all the time, and luckily they were recording almost every day. And then that year, 67, they did a lot of things. There was the premiere of How on the War, which was my first taste of Beatlemania, because outside the studios, there was no screaming or big crowds. But that day outside the movie theater, it was Beatlemania all over again. All these huge crowds of people screaming, and policemen, and we got pushed and shoved, but we did see them, and so that was my first, maybe my first and only encounter with Beatlemania.
How tight knit were the group of fans who would wait outside of Apple or EMI? Like, were they welcoming to you?
No, well, first EMI, and Apple came later. Yeah, yes. They, I don't know. They weren't very. They didn't really like foreigners very much, and they gave the Americans and maybe the Italians and Germans. They gave them a hard time sometimes. And once this one girl punched me in the face and said, "Go home,
What?
you nigger," because obviously, yes, because obviously my skin was darker than, actually, since I arrived in London in February, and that was the height of summer here in Brazil, I was very dark from the beach. And as the months went by, I started losing my tan, and by 69, I was as pale as a piece of paper. But in the beginning, I was very tanned. I could see that in the photos, because I used to go to the beach every day. I lived 1 block away from Copacabana Beach, so I would come back from school and go straight to the beach. So yeah, I guess the girls didn't really like foreigners that much, but I made some good friends, and I still have some good friends in England, and yeah, but I have to say that I guess they would prefer it if the Beatles were just theirs, just for the English fans. But then, if they weren't known everywhere else, nothing like this would have happened.
It's always fascinating to me
Go
to
ahead.
hear all these stories about, these close encounters with the Beatles, as someone who grew up in an age where you don't see celebrities without, like, a small armed militia around them of security guards.
Oh, there was no security there.
How open
Zero.
were the Beatles with their fans in those days?
Oh, they were great. They were very normal. They would talk to us. They would, they would laugh. They would sign autographs, pose for pictures. We had very funny moments with them outside the studios. I remember one night they were recording, and we were outside, of course, freezing, and Paul comes out and sits with us on the steps and says, "Chilly, eh?" Chilly. We're freezing, and he says, "What are you girls doing?" And we said, "We're waiting for you." But just was hanging out with us for a little while. They were very normal. They didn't have any airs or graces about them. They didn't have the pop star attitude at all. They were, they were pretty normal. And of course, like anybody else in the world, some days because they came together, the 4 of them, or they were in the studio together for Sgt. Pepper most of the time. So you would sense that one of them was not in a very good mood. So you would just leave him alone, um, not go to, well, maybe he was tired. They could have been tired, or I don't know, just like anybody, like regular people. And it was something that was interesting is like when Paul arrives, the fans, the John and George and Ringo fans would just go back a step and let the Paul fans be with him. And the same when the others arrived. Yeah, I mean, nobody said let's do that, but that's what we used to do.
There's just a kind of understanding.
Yeah, like let the Paul fans. I remember once we spent weeks and weeks at the Soho Studios where they were where the editing Magical Mystery Tour, and it was great because it was a tiny studio and because it was in Soho and the neighborhood wasn't that great, they would let us stay inside the building. It's a small building, and so we could hear everything they were saying inside the studio, and they could hear us, so we had to keep quiet. And every time they went to the bathroom, they had to pass by us. And actually, there was one day when one of the technicians there gave me some money and said, "Can you run downstairs and get tea for John and Paul?" I said, "Sure." So I did, and I got up and I knocked on the door. I gave the tea, and I handed back the change. And there was one day that Paul, he did that more than once, but the day I was there, Paul said, and there were like 3 or 4 of us, come in here to see some of the movie. And so we went inside, and there were these high stools, and I sat on one, and Paul sat beside me. But when I looked at the Paul fans that were there, they gave me such a dirty look that I immediately, because I didn't realize he was going to sit there, but I immediately, came off the stool and let them sit near him. And then one of my friends said that while they were showing the movie, she was like with her elbow, she was going like this to her friend, like, isn't it great? And then later on, her friend said, "You weren't doing that to me. You were doing it to Paul." So, oh boy. But, it was, Paul had this thing. He, whenever he read something about Brazil, he would come and tell me. He would say, "Oh, I just read in the paper, there's floods in Rio de Janeiro." I said, "Oh, okay." And then he would say, "Well, it's 40 degrees in Rio de Janeiro." And I wasn't very interested, I have to say. And one day he said, "Don't you miss your mom?" Because I was so young, And I would say, "No." Oh boy, my mom is no longer here. She's in, upstairs. And I hope she forgives me for saying that. But, both my parents were big fans, I didn't have any problems there. They were big Beatle fans, both of them. So I had no problem with, some people, their parents didn't approve of them being Beatle fans, but not in my case. My parents were pretty young. That's another thing, they were pretty young to have a daughter my age. So I guess that was, and they loved music, both of them. So that was good for me. And many things that happened in London, my parents only found out in their late 80s when they read my book, because I never told them. Of course, that I used to stay out all night, in the cold, with no food, without going to the bathroom, or, they didn't know that. They thought I was, because after I worked at that hotel, and actually that was just about the only time I got fired from a job, because the hotel owner said that I wasn't fast enough, with the bed changing and cleaning bathrooms and stuff like that. And obviously, I had never done it before. So, I was learning. But then I went to be an au pair at this family's house for 1 year. And then I was an au pair at another house for another year. So, I don't know. I don't know what they thought, because I didn't tell. The first family didn't know that I went to see the Beatles. I don't know what they thought of me. Here I am, 15 years old, and I do my work, and then I disappear, and I only come at 4 a.m. or 6 a.m. And I don't know what they thought, but they never asked me anything. So,
I kind of want to ask you about something and I don't think I could ask for a better transition because I hear all these birds chirping. Uh, it
Oh,
I can
can you
hear the
hear them?
birds.
Yeah.
It's lovely, but
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of
I
birds
think
out here.
that's the perfect way to transition into um asking you about that time that you were on a Beatle record with birds chirping on the
Yeah.
Beatle record.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. Yeah. Well, that was they hardly ever recorded on weekends, but that weekend they did record. That Sunday they were recording, so there were only a few of us there, and we were there. We were talking, and by that time Denise had come back again. It was February. It was in Brazil. We used to get 3 months vacation in the summer at the end of the year. So Denise was back, and we were talking, and then Paul came out and said we weren't, because it was so cold and there was only a few of us. The doorman let us stay inside the building, between the front door and the glass doors. EMI was totally different then, so if you've been there, you're not gonna recognize this. It's not like that anymore. So we were there inside the building, and Paul came out and said, "Can any of you girls hold a high note?" And I had always been in school choirs. I was a soprano, and so I said, "I can." I didn't know what it was for. I just said I could. And then he said, "Okay," and he went back inside. And then the girls started saying, "Oh, you can't go in. You're not British." So I said, "Okay, you go in." um, in the end, I went in, and I brought my friend Gayling with me. I asked if I could bring her. Um, and there's one thing that Gayling and I do not remember if Paul came back for us, or if it was Mal Evans who came for us. We do not remember. But we went in the studio, and they were there, the four of them, and George Martin and Mal and you and the technician and his assistant. And one of the first things that Paul said to me was, "Sing in Brazilian." And which I to this day I get very mad that I didn't, because I've always loved Brazilian music, and our dad always made sure we had the latest records, and that we were aware of the music of our country. That even though we lived in another country, now we lived in Venezuela, but I could have sung many different bossa novas for him, but I didn't. I was too shy. I had turned 16 already, and I guess the four Beatles and George Martin looking at me. I don't know how many teenagers would feel comfortable in that situation, or would I just didn't. I just said no, I'm not. I'm not going to sing. So and then John and Paul started showing us the song, one on the piano and the other on guitar, and what point we had to come in and what we had to sing. And then we went to the microphones, and Paul asked Mal Evans to get microphones for us, for me and him. And I guess he must have gotten them for Gayling and well, I don't know. I don't remember now. All I know is Paul asked Mal to get my microphone, earphones, and he said, "Excuse me." I had short hair at the time. He said, "Excuse me," and he ran his fingers through my hair to push it back and put the earphones on. And then he took one ear off and said, "You have to leave one off so you can hear the sound here in the studio." So I said, "Okay." And then John asked me to sing with him on his microphone. And he showed me, he said, "This microphone is, we have to sing." There's a rectangular sort of guard right in front of the microphone. And he said, the two of us have to sing here in this space. So he said, "Closer and closer" twice. And so I was standing there, and he was here on my right shoulder, very, very close. And we started singing. Then about 15 minutes later, they left they went out to eat. And that's one funny thing that some people say, oh, Lizzie was very good friends with the Beatles. And I say, very good friends. You have no idea how good friends I was with the Beatles. They went out to dinner and left Gayling and myself outside in the bitter cold, and nobody invited us
monsters.
to eat. We were not we were not friends. We were fans. We were obviously the small group that hung outside the studios. We were privileged fans because they knew some of our names and they saw us all the time, and we saw them all the time. But between that and being friends, I think or at least I treat my friends a little better than that. So anyway, so John said, "You're booked for 8:00, miss." And then when he came back, it says, "Aren't you coming, singer?" So I trailed after him, went in the studios, and then we went back to our, to our positions, and I kept singing with John. Later on, Paul asked me to change and sing with him, and Gayling. I of course I know Gayling was there, and we're good friends to this day, and we did speak now and again. But I was just so focused on John. Like, people ask me, what was Ringo doing? What was George doing? I remember George, he lit up incense and he was sitting on the floor playing an Indian instrument. Ringo was around. I remember him being there, but I was interested in John. I just wanted to see him. Exactly. So singing with Paul was good. First of all, he only sings the last Jai Guru Deva. That's the only part he sings. And I sang it with him. They didn't use my voice though. But we were exactly in front of John. So I could see him, where I was before on the microphone with him, shoulder to shoulder. I could move, if I turned my head, I would kiss him, which obviously was something I very much wanted to do.
It was an accident.
Yeah, but anyway, so I could see John. Then, and that we recorded many times. We were there for like just over 2 hours altogether, and we recorded many times. Sometimes just Gayling and myself, and they all said it was great. George Martin said it was great.
Was that the first time you had interacted with George Martin?
Yeah. So they made us feel very at home, comfortable. And there was one good thing, since both of us were used to seeing them every day. We weren't giggling or being silly. We were just we were excited to be in there. But I guess if we were, if we didn't behave, they wouldn't have let us stay in there, So, of all the fans, we were part of the shy, there were some girls that were louder and, and they had different personalities, but both Gayling and myself were more on the shy side. And I think that was in our advantage at that moment. And, we did sit together at one point because Mal brought tea and biscuits, and we were talking. But I think we behaved pretty well at that moment. And several people asked me about Gayling, and the thing is, Gayling is not on any social media, and she, when I need to speak to her, I call her on the phone, because she's not she's not like me. I mean, I'm all over the place, So, but she's a lovely girl, and we've been friends for all this time. And when in 2010, I can't believe it's over 10 years. Oh my God! In 2010, the BBC had been talking to me for like a year. I'd even had forgotten about it. And suddenly they write me and say, well, we're ready to do the segment with you and Gayling. And they wanted to film a segment for a show called, what's the name of the show? Oh God, it's right after the news at night. Oh, the One Show, okay. Maybe? I forgot.
I think it might be the
One Show. I forgot. Yeah, maybe the one show. And so I said, yeah, sure, I'll go. So, but then Galen didn't want to go because she's very private. Every time I say Galen, they want to interview us, and she says, "Oh, you talk, and I agree, I'll agree." She doesn't want to do anything. It's the way she is. And I said to her, Galen, we're getting old. People need to know that we exist, and people need to know our face. And I'm gonna go. I'm gonna fly to London and be on this show. I hope you can do it. But she didn't want. And the producers going on and on at me saying, Lizzie, please help us. Try and get Galen to come too. And then in the end, it was her husband who you know convinced her to do it. And it was a lot of fun. I don't know if you've seen this segment. It's on YouTube. Um, it was 4 minutes, which may not seem like a lot, but 4 minutes on television
Yeah.
is quite a bit. And we spent hours filming, and it was lovely. And then a lot of our friends from those days came to the ones that don't live in London. They came to London, and we all hung out together. And then we went out to dinner, and then we walked all the way to Paul's house, and we passed by his house, and I kept thinking, wow, can you imagine if he opens the door for some reason and sees us all there? Now, the ones that he knew as teenagers.
Oh,
You know.
speaking of that, have you seen any of the
Uh-huh.
Beatles since those days? Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
okay,
Not John. I never. I was in New York City on vacation in the summer of '80, and I have a very dear friend, Tommy, who passed away many years ago. Who he was a DJ, so he found out that John was recording, and I don't even think it had been in the papers yet. And he said to me, Lizzie, let's go to the studio so you can see John. But I didn't want to, because I just felt guilty of having waited, for so long, waited for him. I went to his house several times, and I just thought, I don't want to bother him again. Which now I think it was stupid of me. I didn't wait outside the Dakota. I didn't go to the studios, and I could have seen him. And then I met several girls afterwards. I met several girls that used to hang out outside the Dakota, and they said, Lizzie, he would have loved to see you again. I had my 8-year-old daughter with me. She's going to be 50 this year, but she was with me. And they said, oh, he would have loved to see you. He'd have loved to meet your daughter. And but I don't know what happened to me. I left some gifts, though. I left some gifts at the Dakota, and then I went back there to find out if he had gotten the gifts. And one of his assistants came talk to me, and he said he saw my gifts, because they were very specific gifts, from the Brazilian Indians. And I brought some stuff for Sean's bedroom, decorations. And so he said, oh no, it's it's on his desk, it's there. So at least I know he got my gifts. And I wrote a funny letter, and I included some pictures of him and some Brazilian records. And actually recently Sean mentioned that he found some Brazilian records among his dad's things, and he was listening to them. And I kept thinking, well, unless John went out and bought Brazilian records, and that's probably the ones I gave him. And I gave him one in '67 when I got there, and he said he liked it. It was a very good band playing the Beatles songs in samba. It's called Sam Beatles, and he said he liked it, and it's actually a really good record.
Find this record.
But anyway,
I'll try and have to find
I'm
this
sorry?
record.
Yeah, it's on YouTube, I believe. And then, but that was John. I saw Ringo. I worked in the music business for many years, so I met a lot of major pop stars, and several of them are good friends with the Beatles. But I never said anything about me, because I was working. I didn't think it was appropriate to talk about me personally, since I was there working with famous Brazilian artists. But I guess when my English book comes out and I mail a book for each one of these people, their jaws are going to drop. How come we saw her so many times and she never said anything? But anyway, I saw Ringo. I was at the Grammys with my then boss, Milton Nascimento, who's a major Brazilian artist and a very good close friend. We were at the Grammys, and the two of us, we were standing, and Ringo was right beside us talking to someone else. So, when he finished talking, for 1 minute, I just said, "Hi, Ringo. My name is Lizzie, and I'm from Brazil, and I'm very glad to see you," whatever. Just a very brief. I said to myself, I might not, maybe I'll never see this guy again. So I just have to say hi. That was Ringo. And then George, I was invited when he did that concert at the Albert Hall, his solo concert for the Maharishis. The Maharishi had
the Natural
political
Law
party. Yeah, exactly. I got invited by the producers to go to this concert, so I flew from New York with a friend, and we went to the concert. We had a box beside the Beatle family. All the Beatle children were there, and after the show, there was a backstage get together, cocktail, and I know they had a bigger, party later on for just the real friends, but this was a cocktail party. And then George came out. He had just come off the stage, and at the same thing, I said, "Hi, George. We're both from Brazil. We love the show. Thank you." And 2 minutes and shake hands, and that's it. But Paul, I saw Paul. I saw him many times as a photographer, because the Brazilian EMI would often hire me to take pictures of him and send back to them. So they would give me these passes, but I never spoke to him in any of those occasions. I was always just working as a photographer. And I don't know how it is now, but in those days you could only shoot for the first 3 songs, so you had to focus on, or if it was a press conference, you had just a limited amount of time that you could take pictures. So I never spoke to him, but I went in on February 14th, 1990. I remember the February 14th because, remember, I saw him for the first time on February 14th in 1967. I was hired as a photographer to go with a Brazilian journalist. They were having a press conference for Brazilian journalists because Paul was coming to play here for the first time at Maracanã Stadium. And so I was hired as a photographer. It was in Indianapolis, Indiana. And when I got that, we went into this van, and we went backstage at the venue. He was doing the sound check, so we could listen to him and the band for quite a while. And then he came into this room. Before we entered the room, Fiona, who was his assistant at the time, said to me, "Lizzie, we're not allowing photographers. Our photographer is going to take pictures and send them to the Brazilian EMI. But since I know you, you can give me your cameras. I'll keep them here, and you can listen to the interview." And I said, "Sure." So I sat there. I didn't sit at the main table, where the round table where Paul sat with the journalists. I sat at a chair beside it. And then at the end, he stood up and he shook everybody's hand. And when he got to me, there's a picture of that moment in my book, which the record company gave me. When he gets to me, he shakes my hand and says, "Why do I remember you?" And I said, "Because I sang with you on the same microphone." And so he put his hand on his head and said, "Yes, you were at Abbey Road and the studios." And I said, "Yeah." So we spoke briefly. And believe it or not, I have that brief conversation on tape, because I was taping the press conference with my cassette tape recorder at the time, and I forgot to turn it off when it was over. So I have this brief conversation with Paul on tape. And then I said, I live in New York. I have a daughter, and I've been a backing vocalist for many artists in Brazil. And he said something to the sort of, "Oh, you see, it was good starting with us, something, I don't remember the exact words, but something like that. And he said, are you coming to Brazil for my concert, to Rio? And I said, sure. And he said, and those are the last words I ever heard from Paul McCartney, I'll see you there. Because since then, February of 1990, I've been trying to speak to him, and absolutely nobody lets me anywhere near him. So I have, of course, given up years ago. I just go to the concerts. I get invited. The producers always invite me. But I gave up on trying to talk to him because it's impossible. So, but, I have little good things. Like a friend of my late ex-husband saw him in Sao Paulo by accident. And he was asking her what her tattoos said. And the interpreter was telling her. So there were a couple of seconds of silence. And then she said, I'm a friend of Lizzie's. And he said, oh, what a coincidence. Lizzie, my Brazilian friend. And when she called me on the cell phone right afterwards, he said, oh, what a coincidence. She's your friend. She's my friend. And then she told me, that Paul called me a friend. I made her repeat it. I don't know how many times. Because I said, are you sure he called me a friend? She said, yes, I'm sure. And I said, but are you really sure? And she said, and, it warmed my heart to think that, that Paul McCartney thought of me as a friend.
He probably still does.
And, and the other thing is, my friend who's a producer who's been bringing him all these times to Brazil, she gave him my book. And she saw him look through the book and, smile, because there's so many pictures of him he had never seen before. He just leafed through the book. I wrote a handwritten note for him, which he said he got because it was inside the book, where I thanked him for being so nice to me in those times that I was in London, because I was alone. It wasn't easy being alone, birthdays alone, Christmases alone, everything alone. And it was not like today where you can pick up, your phone and call somebody, and it wasn't like that. It was lonely. It was quite lonely and hard. I was always broke. Anyway, but of course I would do it all over again. And so I'm happy that he got my book. Another friend of mine left my book at the Dakota for Yoko and Sean, and I hope they saw it. I don't think they would throw it away, but especially because the cover is such a breathtaking picture of John, and there's so many pictures of John inside that they've never seen. I imagine they kept it.
I hope they kept it. A bookshelf at the Dakota somewhere.
I know. I hope it is. I hope it is. There's so many stories. There's so many. I just remembered one story, which is, I went on the last year, in '69. I enrolled in school, and I was going to learn English literature and French, but I went to school only when there was nothing happening at the studios, which meant that I hardly ever went to school. So this day I passed by just to see if there was anything happening. There was nothing happening, nobody there, but I saw Paul. Paul often came walking from his home to the studios, and sometimes he would go back walking to the studios. And several of us walked home with him. I did walk home with him in the middle of the night, and he was coming. And actually, another thing, in the summer he would come with no shoes, so barefoot. So when I saw the cover of Abbey Road, I didn't think anything of him being barefoot, because he liked to walk barefoot.
You didn't think he was dead?
So,
yeah.
Oh no, of course not. Of course not. He was just, when I saw the picture, I said, well, another day where Paul came with no shoes. That was pretty normal for us. We'd seen him do that many times. And but so he was coming, and I waited for him, in front of the studios, and he came by and he put his bass down, and the case, and he picked up my books and my book and my notebook and my book, and he was looking through it to see if I was really studying, and I That was funny. And then he said, where's Denise? And I said, Denise is in Brazil. And I said, actually, I got a cassette tape from my friends, and I would like to hear it, but nobody I know has a cassette tape recorder. And because at the time they were like pretty new and expensive. And he said, well, I have one. Come to the house and I'll lend it to you. So then, next day I would go to his house, ring the bell. The housekeeper opens it. The girls outside are saying, what are you doing, Lizzie? You're ringing the bell. And I said, wait, I'll tell you in a minute. So I walk in and he's standing at the door waiting for me. And I had a magazine about Rio de Janeiro, which I gave him. And then I walked inside and he showed me, I went to the house, his house, the sitting room is at the back, which faces a huge garden. So I went in that room with him, and he picked up the tape recorder, showed me how it works, but he told me that the batteries had, were out. And he made a little joke. I don't remember the wording, but like he's only lending me the tape recorder so I buy new batteries, something like that. But I said, don't worry, I'll get batteries for you. And he said, okay, then when you're done, just bring it back. So I went outside, and the girls were like crazy. What are you doing in there? And I gave each one of them a battery. And I said, I just went to pick this up so I can listen to a tape. And it shows you, I mean, we're talking, this guy had released Sgt. Pepper. This guy was extremely famous, and he's concerned that this little girl couldn't listen to a tape. That's how human, normal, quote unquote, they were.
Was his dog Martha there that day?
Oh yeah, sure, she was there. And he had cats, and he had a Yorkshire Terrier called Eddie, and he had several cats. There was a time when he had a cat called I believe his cat Thisbe had Jesus, Joseph, and Mary, and Jesus was a black cat, and I loved that cat, and I played with it outside. No? He would come outside and play. And then I came to Brazil in 1968 for a few months because my family just kind of forced me to. And when I got back to London, I couldn't see Jesus. And I said to Paul, where's Jesus? And he said he went out to preach the world. So I guess he just went away. The cat just
wandered off.
Didn't come back. Wandered off. Yeah. But, just to show you how, how normal they were. And, Paul remembering me after so many years, and, I was, 17, and then suddenly I'm a grown woman with a child, and, and he remembered just looking at me. That was kind of special.
Last question I want to ask you. So
sure.
you had recorded your parts on Across the Universe. That song was kind of it didn't exactly have a straightforward release. When was the first time you actually heard yourself on the Across the Universe? Because that version wasn't on Let It Be.
I heard myself and Galen on the radio at the Kenny Everett show. He played it. I never missed a Kenny Everett show. He was fabulous, and he played it. And then it took a very long time. And remember, I came back to Brazil in late October of 1969, so it took me even longer. And a lot of people asked me if we got paid. And Paul said we were going to get a session fee, but we never got anything. And they didn't. I wrote to them, to Apple, saying, where can I find this record when it comes out? And they wrote me back, giving me the name of a record store and address. And I said to myself, couldn't they just mail me me and Galen a copy of the album? And nope. Nope. And actually, my copy of the album that I got stolen, along with many other things from my collection, which is, I had all the flexi discs from the Christmas discs from the fan club. They got stolen. The album, the one that Galen and myself sing on, got stolen. And
Wildlife, the That one.
Yes, yeah, World Wildlife Fund, yeah. And so then years later, a friend of mine bought. I don't know where he got it. Maybe at a I don't know, a Beatle Fest or something, and he got it for me because it got stolen with the first one I had. But and then people ask me, oh, what happened? What changed? After you recorded, nothing changed because in those days, the only place where they wrote about it
Yeah.
was the Beatles book. Mal wrote a small little thing talking about the recording session. That was it. So nobody knew about it. Just everything was the same. Nothing changed. I mean, we weren't treated different, or it was. It took years and years for the story to come out, in books, and then took years. In the beginning, just our close friends and family members knew about it. That was
Lizzie,
it.
I just want to, give you the biggest thanks for coming on the show today. I've been
Oh,
really
you're very
looking
welcome.
forward to this, and now I can actually say I've had someone who was on a Beatle record on my show.
My pleasure. My pleasure, Ethan. I want to say hi to everybody listening, and I hope when this crazy situation we're in ends, that I can travel and maybe release my book, and outside of Brazil. And so that's it. If you want to, unfortunately, I already have 5,000 friends on Facebook, but you can follow me, and you can also go to my fan page, where what I do in my fan page, I just post, as I said to you before, I post interviews and advertise my book, and post interviews and things, that places that talk about me. So I have everything in one place, and if somebody wants to, research, or they can go there. There's a lot of stuff there. And I'm also on Instagram as Lizzie_Bravo. Um, yeah, I am on Twitter too, but I'm not a Twitter person. I hardly ever go there. But I'm on Facebook every day, and it's my pleasure talking to people and sharing my story. It makes me happy that people are interested. Um, so as I said, later on today, I have a live Q&A with the people in Paraguay. But that's going to be, I have to wash my hair and put some makeup on.
That's the good thing about my show format
So
is I look absolutely awful and no one can tell.
yeah, it's a pleasure talking to you and your friends and the people that listen to your show. I'm always happy to share. I know that I was very fortunate. It was hard. It wasn't easy to be there, but I know that so many fans. Actually, there's one little last thing I forgot to say. One day I was waiting for John. He was inside Paul's house. It was night, and I was the only one there. And when he came out, he rolled down the window to say goodnight to me. And I looked him in the eye and I said, "I love you." And when I read that years later, to write the book, my diary, I said to myself, "Oh my God, I didn't do that. Please tell me I didn't do that." But I did. And then first I was mortified. And then I said, how many girls at that time would give anything to look into John Lennon's eyes and tell him they loved him? So maybe I was just saying that not just for me, but for all the millions of girls who were in love with him, like I was.
You were living out like every other girl's fantasy.
Yeah. So, instead of thinking, oh my God, I made a fool out of myself, I like to think about that specific moment the other way, saying I was there not just for me, but representing all the other girls who loved him and love him to this day, like I do. So anyway, so goodbye, and big
I'll
hug
put all
to everybody.
I'll put all the links to the fan pages and your page on Facebook and the Instagram in the description of the episode. And now it's time for my personal least favorite part of the episode, the spiel. Oh God, the spiel. I haven't given the spiel in a while, so let's give it a whack. Let's give it a whirl. If you're watching this on YouTube, which a lot of you seem to do, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. And also, ding that bell notification icon so you get notified every time a new episode of the show gets uploaded. And I do post other things from time to time, so you'll get notified when I do those. Maybe even a live stream in the future. Probably not. Everyone's doing them now. If you're wanting to watch this somewhere else, we're available on pretty much all streaming platforms. So your Spotify's, your iTunes, your Apple Podcasts, your Podbay, Podbean, Stitcher, PodPod, iHeartRadio, Pod. Basically any website that has the word pod in the name, I seem to be there. And of course, you can follow us on Facebook at Fans on the Run Podcast, on Twitter, Fans on the Run Pod, they wouldn't let me fit podcast, and on Instagram, we're Fans on the Run Podcast, and that's where I post all the fun little graphics I do for the show. And there we go. Oh, and also check out When They Was Fab, the other show that I co-host. I keep forgetting to plug that show, but now I plugged it. Okay, sorry, Ed. But again, Lizzie, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
You're welcome, Ethan. You take care.
You too. And to everyone else listening out at home, I haven't said this in over a month. Thank you. You can go home now.
Fans on the Run is produced by Ethan Alexanian. Additional voiceovers by Richard Phillip. This has been a Showtown production.